I hope that everybody who's watching this video has taken the time after part 2 and part 1 to spend a little bit of time before going into the next part to just kind of review what we talked about, what I talked about, and see if you had any thoughts or comments to share, because this helps you to get it settled in your mind, which is an important part. And this particular chapter will talk about that. The title of part 3 is Time. The word for part 3 is to assimilate. And the thought for part 3 is, it is your job to train your brain. Education's purpose is to replace an empty brain with knowledge. I want you to think about your brain as a muscle. How do you improve a muscle? You do a workout. A workout is a physically and a repetitive use of a muscle. Your brain is not a muscle. So how do you improve a brain? You work it out. A brain workout is to repetitively add knowledge until your brain knows it. Teaching your brain happens automatically. There is no switch to turn it on or off. What does that look like? Whenever you are being exposed to new information, that information goes into your brain. What goes into your brain does not stick the first time, and maybe not even the 100th time. So your job is to put the information into your brain until it sticks. Good examples are the ABCs and counting 1 to 10 when you were a child. You should be spending all day, every day, teaching your brain. Remember, garbage in equals garbage out. Your future is affected more by your daily choices than any other controllable factor. Now, what this means is when you get up in the morning, are you going to get out of bed? If you say no, well, you're making a bad choice. If you say yes, that's great. Then you're going to go to school. If you say no, that's a bad choice. If you say yes, that's a good choice. These are the kind of things you decide all day, every day, and you control those. So make the best choices. This means that when you begin each day, you will decide, is your plan today to increase your knowledge or to settle for garbage? So what you learn should be useful knowledge, not garbage. If you do not do it now, when are you going to have the time? In the future, you will have other things to learn. So muscle your brain up now. Life happens fast. One day you are in school, the next day you have a job, a spouse, and 3 kids. As a child, you have been sent to school for a reason. Teachers teach you, and you teach your brain. Your brain is supposed to be your helpmate. Teaching your brain takes time. Your brain needs enough time to assimilate the knowledge. But once it assimilates the knowledge, it can help you in your life. Let me give you some examples of assimilation. Foreign language. If you're trying to learn a foreign language, in the beginning you learn vocabulary. You learn what the English word is and what the foreign language word is. And you do this lots and lots to get a vocabulary set up. But as time goes by, you will find that when you think of the foreign language word, you automatically know what it means without actually thinking about it. And as more and more times goes by, you begin to be able to think in that language. So now the brain is taking every English word that is said and it tells you what the foreign language word or sentence is. So that's assimilation. A second example is playing football. I want you to imagine a pass receiver. Now, he spends hours and hours and hours every week to practice the skill of catching different kinds of passes. So now it's game day, and he is running down for a long, long pass. He's being chased by a defensive player. He's looking for the ball. He's looking for the sidelines. And all these things are happening without him even thinking, because his brain has taken over, and the brain actually catches the ball for him. Now, writing, personally, I had an experience like this where my brain was taught something. In my job as a chemical engineer toward my end of my career, I was asked to write standard operating procedures for all the 6 chemical plants on the facility where I worked. Now, when you write an SOP or a standard operating procedure, what you say has got to be exactly right. No doubt about it. So when the person is using that and learning their job, when they read that sentence, they do not think, is there anything that's confusing about this? This sentence tells me exactly what I need to do. Now today when I do writing, especially grant writing, as I'm doing this and writing sentences and so forth, immediately my brain will tell me this sentence does not make sense, without me even asking. And then I can correct it to my brain tells me it's okay. See here, in all these 3 cases, your brain is your helpmate. Failing to teach your brain can make your life difficult because you're on your own. It is important to challenge your brain to make it more robust. Failing to teach your brain can make your life difficult. Easy road equals weaker brain. Hard road equals stronger brain. The previous slide talked about the idea of the easy road and the hard road. Now, the hard road prepares you for difficult times. There was a book that I read a few years ago called The Road Less Traveled. And the road less traveled happens to be the hard road. People want the easy road, the easy travel. But that easy travel doesn't prepare them for difficult times. Now, ironically, the first 3 words of this book is the life is difficult. Believe that and prepare yourself by taking the road less traveled. I am not good in English. I tell you to put more time into it. Teach your brain English. I don't like math. I say put in more time and teach your brain math. Why do I need math and English? That is not why you learn math and English. You learn to make your brain more robust. Robust brain will serve you well your whole life. Just remember from part 1, if you cannot use your brain, then you must use your back. Successful people spend a lot of time learning, aka training their brain. Remember in part 1, we talked about if you asked a successful person what was the key to success, what would they answer? And I said they would probably give you an answer, but it may not be the correct answer. And this is the correct answer. Successful people train their brain over and over and over again. And then the brain helps them in their job and in their life, and they become successful. There's a well-known rule called the 10,000-hour rule. This rule states that individuals who stand out above all others in their field to the extent that they change the world have spent 10,000 hours or more training their brain. You know a lot of things very, very well because you spent many, many hours on them. Things like computers, video games, and cell phones. So what I'm saying is that you are probably an expert and do very well in those areas because you spent the time on those things. People who changed their world. Let's start with some people that may spent the 10,000 hours and ultimately changed the world. The first one is Bill Gates. Bill Gates started out being very interested in computers, and he spent thousands and thousands of hours learning about computers, learning about software, learning about hardware, and modifying things to make them better, and all the things that go along with developing the art of computers. Today we have the result of that, and even much better than when he was in the beginning. But Bill Gates changed the world because he spent 10,000 hours or more becoming an expert in computers. Another person that changed the world was Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was an inventor around the early 1900s, and he had all kinds of ideas involving electricity and how it can be used. And one of his most famous inventions was the light bulb. Now, his team, along with himself, spent many, many hours trying to determine the best way to make a light bulb that would last. And so today we have light bulbs, not maybe the same exact one that Thomas Edison invented, but he invented it from doing the hard work of studying and trying and so forth. The next person is the Beatles. Now, when we first saw the Beatles, they had already spent 10,000 hours learning their craft. When they were unknown and did not world known anyway, they would go to these various venues and they would work endlessly to try to develop their skills and write music. And they also had to fill the time, they had to learn other people's music. And so they had just developed a lot of knowledge on music, how to write music, what kind of music was good and bad and so forth. And ultimately they changed the music world. J.D. Rockefeller. I don't know how many of you remember J.D. Rockefeller, but he was a businessman in the late 1800s. And the truth is that J.D. Rockefeller is the richest human that has ever lived. Today we have people that have billions of dollars and maybe even 50 billions of dollars. But Rockefeller, based on the modern, comparing the value of the dollar then and now, had $350 billion. And he got that from oil production and railroads and other things like that. The last one is the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers found the secret to flight. And so they tried all kinds of things with engines and with designs of the plane. And eventually they came upon the idea and checked it out that the wing was critical to flying. So they invented a wing, which is still pretty much used the same design today, that when the plane was flying, the wings would lift the plane up into the air. An ignorant brain is likely your fault. Are you really committed to the hard work of learning, which really means spending time on your studies? Remember, teaching your brain takes time. Things that make brain training harder: jail, baby, and drugs. If you're in jail, you're not really spending time teaching your brain what you need to learn. If you have a baby and you're young and you have no male involved with the relationship anymore, you're so busy you don't have time to train your brain. And drugs. Now, drugs are the thing I talked about before. Your drugs will affect your brain chemically. And your brain is not a toy. You don't experiment with things that will change your brain. You take a drug and you maybe feel different, you maybe feel better or happy or whatever the reason draws you to that drug, but that's just changing your brain chemistry. Nothing else has changed. And if you change your brain chemistry too much or the wrong drugs, you could die or you could damage your brain. Very few people spend 10,000 hours on something and change the world. Your goal is not 10,000 hours, but it is certainly not 0 hours. So what should your goal be? You need to spend as much time as you need to teach your brain the building blocks of knowledge. Building blocks are math, especially the times table, English, especially spelling, writing, especially grammar, and science, especially computers. As you teach your brain these building blocks, and you will then have the brain helping you grow in knowledge. When do you do all this? Well, there's in-school time, there's after-school time, there's time on the weekends. You have been given that time because now, since you're not required at this point in your life to hold a job, you're not required this time of your life to have a house and make payments and buy food and cook the food and all the other things that are provided to you as a student. You have time for those things. Waste that time to your own detriment. Once time is lost, you can never get it back. Part 3 is really a new idea that I wanted to present to you. It's the idea of teaching your brain. You know, the idea that you can just go and sit in class and do nothing, or just hang out and do nothing and you all of a sudden go know something is false. It takes a lot of time to teach yourself and teach your brain. So I would encourage you to give that really strong thought and use it in your future life. End of part 3. So now I would suggest that you take a break, pause the video, and have a discussion among all those who are in the room. Let's just take a minute to think about what I presented and then resume the video.